Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. This is going to occur on the 5th of June, 2020 at 2:25 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is the time zone for the Midwest in the United States. If you're born down under, this will probably be on June 6th. So this is something that I personally believe I have been feeling for the past few days. Things have really been coming to the crisis point, if you will. In the United States, we have had civil unrest. I don't believe, but I'm not quite sure if this has spread to other parts of the globe. But of course, the shutdown has been a global occurrence, and that is still in effect to one degree or another for many of us, even though things have been kind of loosening up a bit. And so there's a lot going on. Now, Sagittarius is the sign of freedom and honesty. And why this is so important for the collective at this time is because deception, or the lack of honesty, can create conditions that allow for people to be subjugated. And I believe that this has been occurring since, time immemorial, but now it's coming to this crisis point where people are starting to question what they're being told. And even those people that are going along with the program, they are seeing evidence that what they thought was not as it seemed. I wanted to talk briefly about problem, reaction, solution, and false flags, because I believe that these are being uncovered with the current with more than the current situation of the civil unrest in the United States, also with the shutdown. But specifically talking about the civil unrest, I woke up this morning to find out that a couple of the people who had been arrested in the protests were lawyers, and one of them was an Ivy League graduate. And they were actually throwing like Molotov cocktails or some kind of incendiary devices. So it wasn't just being at a protest. It was actually, committing violence and, destroying property and setting things ablaze. It didn't surprise me one bit that these were people who were well-educated and prominent, because I think we're going to find out that a lot of the people who are creating the unrest are people who are connected to what we call the deep state. And I'm not making any, accusations about these particular individuals because I don't have that information. It's my belief, conspiracy theory, if you will. And I just want to say, too, that conspiracy theories are things that are used to dismiss people's ideas. When we don't have proof of something, it's always a theory. And sometimes there have been events that have occurred, like assassinations, that we are still arguing about, decades later. And I have been accused of being a conspiracy theorist by a couple of people that I've dealt with in the last couple of weeks. And they were using that as a way to discredit me. And it doesn't bother me one bit because it means that I'm thinking for myself. I don't know. I keep an open mind. But it's important to consider that there may be an ulterior motive for some of the things that are happening. Even if somebody dies and we can say, oh, that's terrible that person was murdered. the reason that is given for why that person was murdered may not be the reason. And therefore, when people run on emotion, they can create a lot of problems for themselves, and they can really heighten the deception unintentionally. And that's why I want to focus on deception here, because this lunar eclipse, we're going to be fighting against deception. We already are. Like I said, this may already be in play, but it's like both things are occurring simultaneously, and because they're forming a square. So we have Sag being about truth and Neptune being about sometimes it can be idealistic and even the spiritual, but perhaps overly idealistic, impractical spirituality. In other words, using spirituality as a form of escape or denial of what is happening in the here and now, and useless sacrifice. Okay. In the tarot, the hangman can be useless sacrifice. Useless sacrifice. Meaning that a person is going into something, acting like they're doing something for somebody else. And really, they're not helping that person, but they're also not helping themselves. So they're not helping anybody. And they're prolonging the misery, you could say. So Mars in conjunction with Neptune at this time means be very careful about when you take actions during this period of time. And I am by no means somebody who considers myself really big on predictive astrology, especially mundane astrology, which is the astrology of the world events. So I don't know what the influence, if we could say it's a month, 6 months. I would say I resonate with the idea of 40 days. That seems like a good number. And we are going to have another lunar eclipse in Capricorn on July 5th, which just so happens to come after the 4th of July, the birthday of the United States. So you can see that the United States may, in fact, be the epicenter, the catalyst for other countries, for the world, and I think it already has been. This is not to be America-centric. This is talking about something larger than this. Larger than that. And the other thing, too, is that the solar eclipse in Cancer, at 0 degrees of Cancer, United States is a Cancerian country. So even, I think it might even have Gemini as the rising sign, or is it the moon sign? I think it's the rising sign, but either way, so the Sag-Gemini polarity also gets triggered, perhaps. I don't know what degree it is. But, all of this going on at the same time. And so, needless to say, I think the United States in the next month plus is going to experience a lot of radical change and a lot of truth being revealed with the lunar eclipses. Full moons in general are about crisis points and also release and also, that purging effect. And of course, we know that, speaking of purging, we know that Pluto is in Capricorn. So Pluto has been in the opposite sign of Cancer, opposing the United States. And, not officially, because the United States is... Yeah, no, officially. I mean, maybe not now. I don't know if it's considered to be opposing it right now, but it was at one time. And so we've gone through a lot of transformation in the last 12 years, to say the least. And now that Pluto is almost out of Capricorn, it's almost like this heightened effect. But I don't want to get into that. I want to talk about some of these aspects that are being made. The Sun is squaring Mars, and the Sun is squaring Neptune. Be careful about having a chip on your shoulder. That is Sun square Mars. When I have that, and I'm doing a personal reading, I think that the person is probably a very touchy person. So they're probably insecure, and they feel like they have to prove themselves. Some of these events that are false flags, or I would say all of them actually, are meant to manipulate the emotions, whether it's through fear or through outrage, okay? And by the way, if somebody gets triggered by the term false flag, understand that throughout history, we may have very well had, that most, if not all of these major events have been false flags. Be it 9/11, be it the Vietnam War and the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, I think, that's almost a given that it was not as it seemed and used as an excuse to begin these wars. Haymarket riot in Chicago, where socialists were blamed for killing cops because they were in a crowd and somebody threw bombs from a crowd. Who knows? Maybe the Boston Tea Party was a false flag. But even Pearl Harbor, there's a theory that was a false flag. So in any case, people can be manipulated through their emotions to go out and... So problem, you create the problem and you create the reaction, the outrage or the fear, and that leads to the solution, which is usually more control. So what we want to do is we want to check in with ourselves. Why are we feeling compelled to take action? Is there some hidden ego issue going on here? I think that a lot of times people want to be seen as the hero, as the good guy, the one who is, the spiritual person who is fighting on behalf of mankind. And so they sometimes take foolish risks. And if something is real and you take a risk, I commend you. But the worst case scenario is to do something that may be a complete deception. And then you just become a useful idiot for somebody else's propaganda and agenda. You don't want to do that either. So with Neptune, even with conjunctions, when Neptune is involved, that can be a challenging aspect, because Neptune has that ability to kind of make the person deluded, and you don't want to be deluded when you're acting. And what makes it more difficult is that with the Sun squaring off to Mars, the person can feel like the underdog in life, and they can feel like they've always had to fight for what they have and feel sorry for themselves, and then act out in a very hasty way. When there are hard angles from the Sun, and especially the Moon, because that's your emotional nature, and that's irrational, the person may be acting in a hasty manner, out of emotion, and being deluded in the process. So even if you're somebody who says, oh, I don't go to protest or anything like that, it's really not acting out necessarily in that sense. It can be acting out where you get very triggered by it emotionally in general, because that, I think, is the other thing that is what they're trying to do in all of these terrorist situations, where they want to lower your vibration. And the vibration is lower. The best way to do that is to get people to be afraid. The shutdown is a perfect example of that. And, I know that some people were trying to be responsible citizens, and I appreciate that. I really do. But I think that a lot of people's fears were triggered, and I could see it in their behavior, just their body language, their actions on the street. I could just tell. And I just think that as more information came out and it was apparent that, the statistics are in the favor of us, not against us, that was shown to be an overreaction. But I don't blame people, because there's a lot of indoctrination. There's a lot of brainwashing. And I feel that even today in 2020, the number one source of that brainwashing is television, or as I call it, the idiot box. And believe me, I watched a ton of television in my day. But last month in April, or actually now we're in June, 2 months ago marked 11 years since I have been free of television. And let me tell you, if you want to heighten your awakening, try it. Try to go without television. You can always, if there are still some good shows on television that you like, nowadays you can probably find an alternative way to see them online if you wish. But this is a major source of programming, especially the mainstream media. And I was just talking to my partner, and he told me that a particular film that sparked the civil unrest, or that was used to spark the civil unrest in my country of the United States, he said that somebody told them that they showed it over and over again. And of course, I know that from past experiences. So these kinds of things are done by design. Again, this is not to say that that did not happen and that it is not a sad situation, but we have to still maintain our composure, in not just in terms of not running out into the streets, but also in terms of how we feel about life on a day-to-day basis, because it can trigger feelings of helplessness when you see it and you identify with the person that is being murdered. It can make you feel that you are helpless as well. And I think it's done by design. And if you're the person who looks like the perpetrator, you can feel a sense of guilt or a sense of shame. And that is a lower vibration as well. We have to be more savvy than that. And it's hard because emotions are, as I said, they're irrational, and you go right, it's like default. The reptilian brain goes right into that groove and that pattern. And so I feel like more truth is coming to the surface. And when I mentioned about those lawyers being arrested, also a politician's child, or, I'm sure this person is an adult child, was arrested at the protests too, which didn't surprise me either. This has happened in the past. And I feel like this is very highly organized. And so the reason I'm going so into that is simply because it's being revealed. And this, for the masses, will lead to awakening. Because they will begin to see that they are being manipulated. Okay, in our civil unrest, they said that 80% of those people were not from the state of Minnesota. So they had to be bussed in, or they had to be organized to come into that area. And when people are doing destructive things, as they did in towns in like Chicago, around where I live, that creates a lot of problems for people who are already struggling, who have small businesses and have been shut down. I mean, it's absolutely terrible to do that to people. And especially under the guise of, honoring somebody else. It just isn't the case. And when people realize this, they will begin to connect the dots. It's a process, and some people are already aware of this and they know the drill. Some people are, kind of confused right now. But Sagittarius is about the bigger picture, not only about manipulation, but about freedom. How do we become free? We don't become free through indifference, and I would never suggest becoming hard of heart and indifferent to suffering, but understanding that you can always give love to a situation. You can add to life instead of detracting from it with your higher vibes. And looking at some of the other challenging effects here, we have the sun squaring Neptune. This is, to me, one of the biggest takeaways from this. Know thyself. If you have the sun square Neptune in your natal chart, or you have or you have the sun in the 12th house, or you have maybe the sun in Pisces, or even sometimes the sun in Gemini, where you just kind of, go back and forth about who you are. Or maybe you're a person who never has really embraced the idea of deserving to have your own purpose in life, and you have always allowed other people to dictate what you should do and who you should become because you wanted their approval. This can be a wake-up call for you, because with the sun square Neptune, people are being manipulated because they don't have that firm sense of themselves. So they're looking to the outside world to define them. And this can come with joining certain groups, with being involved with certain people. And that just adds to the confusion. It doesn't lead to really defining yourself, because you're defining yourself through somebody else, although that would be more of the opposition. With the square, there's a frustration. There's a sense of like, I'm trying to be myself, but I keep butting heads with this illusory force that seems to kind of like be so strong that I can't escape from it. The way out is in, and that is how we become more understanding of who we are, is through active, deliberate decision to live an authentic life. The moon is also squaring off to Neptune, and that can give feelings that are coming from a sense of disillusionment, where a person had hopes for something, high hopes, that were dashed. And again, when I'm looking at personal charts, when I'm doing personal readings, and I'm seeing an individual who has this configuration, I know that they probably build things up emotionally and nothing ever lives up to what they have built up. And I think, the human condition can resemble this in general anyhow, but for some people, this is very much how they operate, and they find themselves constantly disappointed as a result. And it's sad because it doesn't have to be this way. One of the things that we can do is we can have that sense of how we want things to be and still be able to accept what is. There's a great book by a Sagittarian named Byron Katie. She's a modern spiritual day teacher, and some of you probably know who she is. And she has a wonderful book of mini essays or like little experiences that she had, spiritual anecdotes called Loving What Is. And it's really kind of Buddhistic, if you will, where, because that's kind of what Eckhart Tolle, the now moment, that we have to embrace the now moment. And when you are not seeking for anything else other than what you have in this moment, it's amazing how much happier you become. And so when you're looking for life to always be fair, always be perfect, never have pain, that in and of itself will cause pain. This is a universe of contrasts. Those contrasts exist for a purpose. Otherwise, this would be heaven. But here's the deal. We can co-create with the universe our own version of heaven, or we can co-create a hell. It's all up to us how we choose to view any situation. Some people go through incredible challenges with so much grace because they choose to see things in a certain way, not choose to be deluded. I see a lot of kind of fuzzy unicorns and lollipops mentality out here where people dumb down happiness and their own lives as a result because they refuse to work on their shadow. They refuse to see that side of life. They only want to see everything that's bright and shiny. And that's not what I'm talking about whatsoever. But what I'm talking about is being able to look at duality, and not be afraid of it. And really what I call it is the paradox of life. That things can be both at the same time. That we can mourn the loss of somebody's life and at the same time not believe it is done for the reasons given, and therefore not be willing to act out in a violent way or in a way that is a destructive way, thinking that we are respecting somebody's memory or thinking that it's going to help humanity along in doing so. To me, that's clouded thinking, delusional thinking, and overly emotional thinking, which creates the delusion and the clouded mind. So, people tend to be binary thinkers. If I think somebody's death is terrible and unfair, that means that I have to also feel these feelings that go along with it. And I believe that everything is in divine order, even when it seems like all hell is breaking loose. That's how I feel, and I don't think that I'm delusional for feeling that way. I think that it serves a purpose. I'm not going to get riled up about it because I know that something better is waiting for us at the other end. And speaking of the other end, we're talking about the end of this year when there will be a solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And this may be the bookend that we're waiting for. I heard that there's something called the event, and it's happening, I think, in December of this year. And looking at it and trying to figure out what it was, I don't know if it's Jupiter and Saturn forming a conjunction in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is the sign of the collective. And with Jupiter in the sign of the collective, I think that humanity will be healed. Saturn can make us capable of realizing our dreams when it's in conjunction with Jupiter. I mean, having it not just be pie in the sky. So don't fret about the temporary. Think about the bigger picture with this full moon. Think about the purging that is taking place, the lies that are being revealed that have, led to so many deaths, not just one death. A lie about a war can lead to millions of deaths and millions of maimings and people with post-traumatic stress disorder. Don't forget about those people either. This is not a one-time event. This is something that has been going on. And the more that we awaken to the manipulation, the better off we're going to be, because we're not going to be fooled. We're not going to fall for the okie doke next time. It's a purging. A purging means a cleansing. And for sure that's occurring. Let me leave you with something good, because I'm talking about all these challenging things. There's a conjunction between Jupiter and, a sextile, which is also a friendly angle, like a trine, between Jupiter and Neptune. And these are both spiritual influences. One is more of the kind of at the consciousness level of Neptune, and then even the philosophical level, or kind of more on the worldly end of things, of the organized philosophies of Jupiter. But even when it comes to material blessings, this could also come about, where your dreams come true. And you're thinking, how can my dreams come true when everything, it seems like it's up for grabs? It's like life springs fairy dust on you in some way. I think I'm going to leave it there, because this is a really long video, but I just want to impress upon you that I think that this is a beautiful thing. I've gotten some really wonderful feelings, even though sometimes we can get emotional. That can be beautiful as well. Sagittarius is an optimistic sign, so I don't think that it's going to be a dark influence. I just think that it's going to feel as though the chains are loosening from us, and it's coming from being given the truth, or the truth being revealed to us. Okay, thanks for listening, and God bless you. I'm going to be doing a tarot spread for the full moon, because I think that this is a very important time, so stay tuned for that. Take care. Bye.